This happened last New Year's Eve. I was 35, buried in graphic design work. I had planned to join the celebrations, but after a bad breakup, I hid in my tiny apartment. The city was buzzing outside, but my world felt small and lonely. I sat at my desk, my eyes glued to the screen. Fireworks crackled in the distance, mixing with laughter and cheers. It should have been festive, but I was just trying to finish a project. Then I heard something odd. A melody crept through the walls. It was familiar but warped, like a broken record. I shook my head, convincing myself it was just party music from my neighbors. As midnight approached, I finally turned to my window. I looked down at the street. People were dancing, faces lit with joy. Suddenly, they froze. A crowd stood below me, staring directly at my window, their expressions blank. My heart raced. I rubbed my eyes, hoping it was a trick of the light. When I opened my eyes, they were still there, unmoving. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I backed away and tried to focus on my work instead, but I couldn't shake that unsettling feeling. A knot formed in my stomach. I glanced at the clock. Only a few minutes to midnight. Then I heard something else. It was muffled but clear. Crying. Soft weeping came from my closet. My heart dropped. I thought about ignoring it. Maybe it was just the wind or the noise of the party. But the crying continued, each sob tugging at my curiosity. I had to know what was happening. I stood up, feeling shaky. I walked to my closet, my hands trembling. What could it be? I opened the door, dreading what I might find. The silence inside was thick. I glanced around, but there was nothing, just clothes and darkness. Then I heard it again, a whisper so soft it made my skin crawl. Help me. I stepped back, chills running down my arms. Was I going crazy? I felt trapped in my own apartment. I wished I could escape, but I needed answers. Before I could think, I turned to leave. That's when I saw it. In the dim light of my mirror stood a figure. It was a face I recognized. Someone from the smiling crowd outside. The one person who had locked eyes with me. But that face was now twisted. A shadow of a person. I froze, terror gripping me. I couldn't breathe. I felt the world around me dissolve. I bolted for the door, desperate to escape whatever nightmare this was. But as I stumbled into the living room, I heard laughter. The laughter of that frozen crowd echoing in my mind. What had just happened? I felt dizzy and questioned my sanity. The melody and whisper lingered in my head. I was certain they still watched me. In that moment, I realized my new year had turned into a horror I could not understand. I could not shake the feeling that something was very wrong, both inside and outside my apartment. I stumbled into the hallway, my heart racing. I had to get out. I needed fresh air. I fumbled with my keys, but my hands felt numb.
The laughter from outside echoed in my ears, mixing with that haunting whisper. I finally slid the key into the lock and threw the door open. The night air hit me hard. I hesitated. What would I find outside? Would those blank-faced figures still be there? I forced myself to step out, gripping the doorframe as I did. The street was eerily quiet now. The fireworks had fizzled, and the only sound was the distant murmur of the city. I looked down, half expecting to see that crowd staring back at me, but the street was empty, as if everyone had vanished. I took a deep breath. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe I just needed to shake it off. My eyes scanned the darkened street, searching for some sign of life. That's when I noticed something on the sidewalk, glinting under the faint streetlight. It was small, a broken shard of glass. I stepped closer. As I knelt down, I realized it wasn't just glass. It was part of a photo frame. I picked it up and saw the corner of a picture inside, an image of the crowd, all smiles, but one face felt more real than the others. My heart raced again. It was the same face, the twisted one from my mirror. I dropped the fragment, nausea swirling in my stomach. How was this possible? I looked around, desperate to find an answer. Just then, I heard it again, a whisper, just above a whisper. Help me. This time it was coming from an alley to my left. My mind screamed for me to run, but my body wouldn't move. I was drawn to it, the sound pulling me closer. I stepped into the alley, feeling the weight of the shadows. The air felt thicker, wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the darkness. I took another step, my eyes strained to see into the void. There, at the far end, stood a shape. I squinted. It looked like a person, facing away from me. "Excuse me," I called hesitantly, my voice shaking. "Are you okay?" The figure slowly turned around. My breath halted. It was another face I recognized, one that had been in the crowd, but this one wasn't twisted. It was calm, almost staring blankly at me. I stepped back, the chill creeping back into my bones. Then the figure raised a hand and pointed directly at me. Panic surged within me. I turned and ran back toward my apartment, my feet pounding against the pavement. I could feel that watchful presence return, feeling heavier than before. As I slammed the door shut behind me, I leaned against it, gasping for breath. My mind raced with questions. What was happening? Who were those people? And why were they reaching out to me? But just then, the melody returned, clearer now, and I realized it was no longer coming from outside. It was coming from inside my apartment. I took a step back, dread settling deep in my gut. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Everything went dark. I stood there in the blackness, heart pounding.
Silence enveloped me, but the melody had not stopped. It hovered in the background like a sinister lullaby. I felt for the wall, my fingers searching for a switch. A soft click, and the lights flickered back on, dim but enough to see. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. The room felt off, like it was holding its breath. Nothing appeared broken or out of place, but the air was thick with tension. That's when I noticed something on the floor. A small piece of paper lay under my coffee table, white against the wooden surface. I bent down to pick it up, my fingers trembling. It was a torn note, the writing jagged and hurried. "Find the truth," it read, "before they come for you." I froze, pulse quickening again. Who had left this? More importantly, who was they? I glanced around my apartment, half expecting to see someone lurking in the corners, but no one was there. Just me and the creeping sense of dread. The melody continued, soft but insistent, and I traced it back to the small radio on my kitchen counter. I had left it off. With a deep breath, I crossed to it and turned the volume down. The music quieted, but didn't stop. Instead, it shifted into a haunting rendition of Auld Lang Syne, and the memories of the crowd flooded back. The shared laughter, the energy of the night, now tainted by an ominous feeling. Suddenly I heard a knock, one sharp sound that echoed through the quiet apartment. I jumped. "Who's there?" I called out, voice wavering. No response. Just silence. I moved to the door, heart racing, and peered through the peephole. Nothing but the dimly lit hallway outside. I waited for a moment. Then curiosity got the better of me. I slowly unlocked the door, opening it just a crack. "Hello?" I whispered into the hallway. No one. Then a distant echo of that maddening laughter floated down the corridor. It sounded so real, so close. I poked my head out, scanning the shadowy passageway. That's when I saw it. A dark figure stood at the end, cloaked in shadow, facing my apartment door. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its gaze bore into me. My breath hitched. It moved slightly, as if to step toward me. I slammed the door shut, heart hammering, a wave of terror washing over me. The rush of what felt like a storm of whispers filled the room again. "Help me." This time it sounded more desperate. I backed away from the door, stumbling into the kitchen. My fingers grasped for something, anything I could use for protection. A knife set gleaming on the counter, but I hesitated. What if it really was just my imagination? If I was wrong, I'd only be scaring myself further. But deep down, the feeling of being hunted pressed down on me. I turned around. The lights flickered once more, plunging me into another brief darkness. Panic surged, and I fought the urge to scream. The whispers crescendoed, wrapping around me. I had to find out what was going on, but I was scared of what I might uncover.
And just as I was about to grasp the knife, I heard a voice, clearer this time. "Let me in." All at once, everything froze. I needed to decide, face whatever waited beyond the door, or hide and hope it would go away. I stood still, breath held, the voice echoing in my ears like a dark lullaby. Let me in. My heart thrummed madly, as if desperate to break free from my chest. The mix of fear and uncertainty twisted inside me. Who was outside, and what did they want? I considered running to my bedroom for my phone. I needed to call someone, anyone, but the thought of turning my back to the door felt like an invitation to something sinister. The light flickered again, and for a moment I was plunged into darkness. I swiped at the knife on the counter, the cold metal grounding me. "Let me in," the voice repeated, more insistent this time. With a surge of adrenaline, I threw open the door. My brain screamed at me to run, but I was met with an empty hallway. Nothing moved in the shadows, just the soft hum of the radio from my apartment. I stepped out cautiously, clutching the knife tightly, muscles tense. "Hello?" I called, my voice bold despite the pounding in my chest. Silence. I looked down the hall in both directions. No sign of the figure. Just as I turned back toward my apartment, I saw it, a faint glimmer under the mat. I knelt to retrieve it, heart racing. Another note. I unfolded it with shaky hands. Trust nobody. They are watching. My stomach dropped. They? Who were they? I pocketed the note, desperate to understand. I felt exposed, a target in the open hallway. I turned to go back inside when I heard a soft rustle behind me. My heart lurched. I spun around, knife raised. There, just at the edge of the light, stood a woman. Her face was pale, eyes wide with fear. "Please," she gasped, "you have to help me." I didn't lower the knife. "Who are you?" "I don't have much time," she said urgently, glancing over her shoulder. "They're coming for me. Before she could finish, the lights flickered again. The hallway plunged into darkness, and I could hear the faint sound of footsteps approaching. "Get inside," I yelled, and she dived past me into my apartment. I slammed the door shut and turned the bolt, the sound echoing in my ears. "What are they? Who's coming?" I demanded, spinning to face her. Terror painted her features. "I can't tell you. They'll find us." She took a shaky breath. "But I have to try. You need to learn the truth before it's too late." Just then, the radio blared to life, drowning her out with a blaring siren that echoed through the apartment. The melody twisted, sinister, and distorted. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us. My mind raced. There was no going back now. Whatever I had stumbled into was only getting worse. All we had was time, and with it ran a very real danger. "Find the truth," I repeated silently, clutching the knife tighter. But what was the truth?
And would I be able to handle it when it came? The walls seemed to close in, shadows dancing ominously. Then a louder knock came from the door. It was heavy, insistent. "Let us in." My heart sank. Another voice joined the chaos, and whatever answers I had hoped to find were slipping away, replaced by a growing certainty. I was not alone in this nightmare. "Who are you?" I whispered to the stranger, panic sharpening my voice. And that was when I knew the night was far from over. The loud knock echoed like a gunshot in the stillness of my apartment. My pulse quickened. My grip tightened on the knife, the blade glinting in the dim light. I shot a glance at the woman beside me. Fear radiated from her, but there was something else, a flicker of urgency in her eyes. "Don't open the door," she whispered, her voice low and trembling. I took a step back, heart racing. "What do they want?" "There's no time to explain," she hissed. "Listen, you need to trust me. This is bigger than you know." The knocking came again, this time followed by muffled voices outside. "Open up, we know she's in there." My breath caught. "Who's outside?" "I can't," she started, but stopped as the voices grew louder. "They'll take you if you don't help me." I felt caught in a crossfire of fear and confusion. What was happening? Suddenly I heard a soft click, my door handle. They were trying to get in. Panic flooded me as I bolted to the door, my mind racing. "Do you have anything? A weapon?" I asked, looking around. She shook her head, her hands trembling. "No, just trust me." "Trust you," the words slipped out, edged with skepticism. But then I heard something, a faint whisper slicing through the din from outside. "Let us in, it's your only chance." I hesitated, torn between the threat of the unknown and the urgency in her eyes, but something deep down urged me to protect what little I had left. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered once more, plunging us into a black void. My heart raced as I felt my way back toward the couch, knife in hand. I could barely see the woman, just the outline of her frozen in fear. "Stay close," I whispered, trying to sound brave. I can hear them," she stammered, her voice frail. "They're right outside. We have to hide." Suddenly, the sound of glass shattering resonated from behind me. I spun around, the knife raised again, breath catching as I realized we weren't alone. A figure emerged from the dark, dressed in black. I couldn't make out a face, only a shadow that moved swiftly toward us. "Don't be afraid," it said, voice smooth but icy. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice trembling. The figure tilted its head, as if amused. "We want her." "No, please," the woman cried, backing away. "Why? What do you want with her?" I demanded, fierce determination rising. I stepped protectively in front of her, knife still poised.
"She knows too much, just like you're about to," the figure warned, stepping closer. "You have to make a choice. Let her go, or face the consequences." The weight of the situation surged inside me as I considered the choices. Letting her go felt like a betrayal, yet holding on to her could mean doom for us both. Then I noticed something in the shadows behind the figure. Another form stepped forward, a woman with fierce eyes. "We don't have time for this. The clock is ticking." And that was when I realized the urgency wasn't just in the moment, it was a countdown to something far worse. "Both of you need to decide. Trust us or trust her," the first figure said, as a flicker of light returned, revealing both their faces momentarily. The woman beside me gasped, You're with them?" Fear clawed at my insides. Suddenly, everything I thought I knew twisted. "Time's running out," the second figure said, And with those words, the choice between safety and survival crashed down like a wave. I looked at the knife in my hand, and then back at the woman beside me. I had to choose, but which path would lead us out alive? The woman's eyes darted between me and the figures, panic writ large on her face. I could see she was desperate, like a cornered animal. Her breath trembled as she whispered, "You have to trust me." I weighted the words in my mind. Trust felt like a fragile thing in that moment, ready to shatter. I glanced at the shadowy forms of the figures closing in, feeling the tension coil tighter in my chest. "Why should I?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You're both just as dangerous. What do you even want from her?" The first figure stepped closer, its face shrouded in darkness. "What we want is to keep you safe, but we can't do that unless you let us do what we came for. She's a liability." Before I could respond, the woman pulled on my arm, her grip like a vice. "Don't believe them. They're lying. If you let them take me, you'll regret it." "Enough," the other figure barked, voice sharp. "You think you understand the stakes? You have no idea what's been set in motion. Trust us, and we can protect you both." I struggled to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside. The shadows shifted around us, their looming presence part threat, part promise. I thought of what I stood to lose if I let them continue. The lights flickered back to life, dim but enough to illuminate the room. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement, something on the floor. My heart raced. I realized what it was. "Look!" I pointed at the shattered glass on the ground. "What if there's more coming?" "Not more," the fierce-eyed woman replied, "but someone who doesn't care about your choices." A shiver crawled down my spine. The figures exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the hallway. My fear rocketed. We were out of time. "Hide!"
I hissed at the woman, but before I could make a move, the shadowy figures sprang into action, their movements precise and fluid. "Conversion or sacrifice," the first figure said, lunging for the woman beside me as I leapt forward, knife out. In one frantic motion, I moved to block the figure, my heart pounding. Instead, a figure collided with me from the side, propelling me against the wall as everything went black again. I gasped as I hit the ground, my knife slipping from my grasp. I struggled to regain my bearings, but all I could hear was a commotion. Shouts, mixed with muffled sounds that sent my mind into a spiral. "Stand back," a voice echoed, sharp and commanding. It was a new presence, joining the chaos, a clear but unfamiliar voice cutting through the darkness. I blinked, dazed, struggling to refocus. The lights flickered erratically, and I couldn't make sense of what was happening. Then, through the confusion, I noticed a figure stepping into the dim light, larger and more imposing than the others. This one meant business. "Get out of the way," it called, and I felt a terrible jolt of fear race through me. I had no idea who this person was, but I sensed they weren't here to play nice. That's when I saw it, the glint of metal tucked in their waistband. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing. Choices were no longer in my hands. I was at the mercy of a whirlwind of shatters and flashing lights, and I had no idea who would be left standing when the storm settled. The room seemed to freeze. My breath caught in my throat as I sized up the newcomer. They towered over everyone, their dark attire blending into the flickering shadows. I couldn't tell if they were friend or foe, and the way they addressed the others implied a certain authority. Suddenly, chaos erupted. The figures that had been closing in on us now turned their attention to this imposing figure. "You don't belong here," one of the shadowy figures shouted, voice tight with anger. "Neither do you," the newcomer shot back, pulling a weapon from their waist. The metallic sound cut through the air, sending a shiver down my spine. I crouched low, desperate to shield myself and the woman beside me. "Do we just stay here?" I whispered, heart racing. She didn't answer, her gaze locked onto the confrontation unfolding before us. The tension hung like a thick fog as the two sides squared off. I could feel the weight of anticipation in the air, tinged with fear and uncertainty. "What's happening? Who are they?" I demanded, glancing at the woman. "I can't explain now," she said, her voice trembling yet urgent. "Just trust me to get us out of this." I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe there was a way out. But as I watched the figures tense and prepare for a face-off, my instincts kicked in. "Stay back," the newcomer warned, their focus shifting to us, giving me a moment to assess our next move. A shard of glass crunched underfoot, and I felt the fear swell within me again.
Then, the first figure lunged toward the newcomer. It was like everything happened in slow motion. I felt the air rush out of my lungs as I saw the newcomer dodge the attack. With swift precision, they countered, and the figure stumbled back, momentarily thrown off guard. I had to act. "What do we do?" I shouted, directing the question at the newcomer, hoping for a plan, a signal, something, anything. "Get her to safety," they barked, eyes flashing with determination. My heart raced. "But where?" "Follow me. Move." They gestured toward a door at the far side of the room.
The woman hesitated, eyes darting between me and the chaos. "This way," I urged, grabbing her hand. With one last glimpse at the unfolding battle, I turned and ran, dragging her behind me. We reached the door, and I threw it open. A cold rush of air hit us, and I could hear the distant sound of sirens in the night. My mind spun. Running felt both pointless and urgent. It was a race against something I couldn't quite comprehend. "Where are we going?" she gasped as we dashed down a corridor. "Anywhere away from here," I replied, glancing back to see if we were being followed. There was no sign of the battle, just echoes of shouts lingering behind us. But then, just as hope started to spark, I heard footsteps approaching fast. The shadows were restless. They wouldn't leave us alone that easily. "That was too close," I panted, glancing behind me, bracing for the next onslaught. But before I could think, a figure stepped out from the shadows ahead. My stomach dropped. We weren't done yet. "Stop right there," the figure said, voice low and menacing. I realized we weren't just running into safety. We might be running straight into more danger. The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing a gaunt face shadowed by a hood. I felt my limbs grow heavy as adrenaline surged through me. "What are you doing here?" the figure demanded, taking a step closer, eyes piercing through the darkness. "Just let us pass," I pleaded, my voice shaky. The woman beside me tightened her grip on my arm, uncertainty flickering across her features. "No one just passes. Not tonight." They paused, scanning us like we were prey. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into." I glanced back, half expecting the chaos to surge in our direction. "We don't want any trouble. We just need to get away." The figure chuckled darkly. "Running won't help you. They'll follow you everywhere." Before I could respond, a loud bang echoed from behind me. My heart dropped as the door we had come through burst open. The newcomer we had met earlier appeared, eyes wild, weapon raised. "Step back," they shouted, advancing toward the figure blocking our path. Panic welled up. I was caught in the middle of this new standoff. "What do we do?" I yelled at the newcomer, now facing threats from both sides. "Trust me," they said, voice firm. "I'll handle this."
The threat before us hesitated at the newcomer's approach, but narrowed their eyes in defiance. "You're outnumbered," they snarled. "I'm not here to fight you," the newcomer replied, steadfast. "I'm here to protect them." The woman clutched my arm tighter, fear radiating off her. I turned to her, determined to keep moving. "We need to find another way out, now." I jerked her hand, making a run for it, but the intense standoff held my attention long enough for the figure in the shadows to lunge forward. "You'll regret this," they shouted, reaching for us. In a flash, the newcomer fired a shot, a loud crack slicing through the chaos. I ducked instinctively, pulling the woman down beside me as the sound echoed. That moment seemed to stretch forever. The figure staggered back, momentarily stunned, but I knew this wouldn't end there. "This way," I urged, pulling the woman back around. We dashed down an intersecting hallway, the clamor of chaos still ringing in my ears. Each step felt like it could be our last. "Where are we going?" she gasped again, scanning our surroundings frantically. I had no answer. All I could do was put one foot in front of the other. And then, as if fate were toying with us, I turned a corner and froze. "Oh no," I whispered. In front of us lay a solid wall, no door in sight. We had run into a dead end. The wall felt like a cage closing in. I spun around, breath racing. The sounds of pursuit were closing in, and I glimpsed the newcomer rounding the corner behind us, but they were being followed. "Think," I shouted, panicking as reality pressed in. And then I saw it, a trapdoor at the base of the wall, barely visible beneath a layer of dust. "There, help me," I yelled, scrambling to push away the debris. But before I could reach it, a shadow loomed behind me. Someone was almost here. I had no time. My heart raced. The shadow moved closer, and I could feel the oppressive weight of fear creeping down my spine. I turned just in time to see a figure stepping into the dim light, their intent written all over their face. Eyes narrowed like slits, they took stock of the situation, a sneer forming on their lips. "What do we have here?" the figure drawled, the playful tone cutting through the air like a knife. I could see sharp features and the glint of something metallic at their side. "No time for games," I shouted, desperation coursing through me. "We need to get out. They're coming." The figure chuckled darkly. "And you think I'd help with that? This is all just a delightful mess." I turned back to the trapdoor, but the woman was already trying to shove away the debris. "Hurry," I urged her, keeping my eyes on the newcomer.
Panic clawed at my throat as the sound of footsteps echoed behind me. Please. Just as we moved more shrapnel from the trapdoor, the newcomer lunged forward. You shouldn't have come here, they warned, pointing the weapon toward the figure. Leave while you can.
The cloaked figure stepped closer, unfazed. And what will you do about it? You're just a kid playing at hero. They laughed, low and mocking. I felt the anger boil up inside me. Shut up, I screamed, tears stinging my eyes. I couldn't let them intimidate us. You don't know who you're messing with. The figure's smirk faded slightly. Oh, but I do know. You're the ones who stumbled into something much larger than you realize. If they catch you, you won't be able to escape. I could hear footsteps drawing nearer, and my throat grew tight. Finish with the trapdoor, I shouted at the woman. Now! She was almost there. Her fingers were just inches from the hinge when the newcomer stepped forward, tension radiating from them. You really think they'll let you go that easily? No! I shouted back, feeling the walls close in. I didn't want to think about what would happen next. Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled, vibrating like a warning. An explosive crash rattled the air, sending echoes through the halls. The cloaked figure's smile vanished. Stay back, the newcomer shouted, eyes darting around us. A blinding light burst behind us, and I stumbled back, instinctively reaching for the woman. But it wasn't just light. Something was coming this way, fast and menacing. Get down, the newcomer commanded. Before I could react, the doors at the end of the hall blew open, and figures poured in, a wave of darkness surging toward us. My breath caught, and the trapdoor was forgotten as dread filled every corner of my mind. Then, everything went dark. I awoke on a cold, hard floor, blinking against the bright light above me. For a moment, confusion enveloped me. The chaos, the faces, everything faded into disarray. I sat up quickly, heart racing, scanning my surroundings. I was alone. The woman, the figures, the overwhelming shadows, all vanished. I found myself in an empty room, bare except for a single door on the far wall. My throat was dry, and a strange silence enveloped me like a shroud, thick with anticipation. Where was I? My mind raced back to the chaos of the hallway. Had I escaped? Were they still chasing me? I struggled to my feet, glancing around for any signs of what had happened. The only sound was a faint hum, like distant music, that reminded me of the insistent melody that had drawn me into this mess in the first place. After a moment, I approached the door, pushing it open cautiously. It swung inwards to reveal a dim corridor illuminated by flickering lights overhead. Anxiety pinged in my gut. I stepped out, every instinct on alert. As I moved through the corridor, the pounding of my heart was deafening. I could hear echoes of laughter and whispers that sent chills down my spine. Were they real, or was I imagining them? My mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. I reached a staircase leading down into shadow. As I descended, my steps felt heavy, as if invisible chains pulled me back.
Taking a deep breath, I reminded myself I had escaped. I didn't know from what, but I was free, or at least I hoped so. I had to keep moving. With each step, I saw glimpses of the past, the faces of the crowd, the twisted reflections in the mirror, the desperate cries from the dark alley. The weight of it all felt like a lingering fog, obscuring whatever clarity I sought. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I entered a dimly lit hall. The air felt charged, as if something was on the precipice of happening. Then a door burst open from my left, and I froze. The figure from before appeared, tall and cloaked, face hidden. "You're not safe yet," they said, urgency lacing their voice. "We have to move." I hesitated, torn between trust and fear. "But, trust me," they interrupted, eyes narrowing in the half-light. "They're coming for you." Before I could respond, laughter erupted nearby, cold and cruel. It sent a shudder through me, a reminder of countless horrors faced. I nodded, afraid of what lay ahead, but desperate to survive. The figure led me down another corridor, heart pounding as I stole a glance back. The shadows were shifting, curling like smoke towards us. "What are they?" I blurted out. "What do they want?" "Answers," the figure replied cryptically, glancing at me just as we slipped through a door into a darkened space. Inside was a small chamber lined with old photographs, their glass surfaces cracked and faded. I stepped closer, heart racing as the faces leaned out at me, and then a shiver ran through me. The familiarity of one face burned into my memory. It was hers, the woman who had pleaded for help. "Do you remember?" the figure asked, voice low. "She was looking for you, for the truth." "Yes," I whispered, realization hitting. But what was the truth? I felt the weight of all the questions bearing down. What did she know? A low growl resonated through the chamber, and I spun, instinctively moving closer to the figure. "They're close," the figure said, tightening their grip on an object tucked inside their cloak. "We need to go, now." The weight of uncertainty pressed against me as I followed, shadows pooling at our heels. Just as fear began to coil in the pit of my stomach, I stepped through a doorway directly into another world. A city street bustling with energy. Laughter mingled with soft music. Fireworks burst above, the same familiar explosions from that night. But there was something off. These were not the same joyful faces, nor the kind laughter I remembered. I felt their eyes upon me, watching, assessing. Was I free or trapped in a more intricate game? I turned to the figure beside me, but they had already vanished, swallowed by the crowd. My heart raced, and I stumbled back, searching for an answer, for a glimpse of clarity. I felt eyes on me, not just in the city, but from the shadows that loomed in the corners of my mind. "Help me," echoed softly in my ears.
And with those lingering words, the shadows began to sway, and the crowd morphed, their laughter twisting into a sinister melody. I felt lost in their gaze, caught between the past, present, and the questions I still couldn't grasp. Whatever I had escaped, the truth remained elusive, lurking just beyond reach, caught in a web I couldn't hope to untangle. I was here, but part of me could never leave.